Hello and welcome to our show. There's a lot going on in the cable and electric industries that will ultimately impact Selco. I'm Maria Lemieux, a commissioner on the Selco board and host of Lights Cable Action. I'm here with Michael Hale, general manager of Selco. We've developed this cable show to supplement information provided to you, the consumer, through monthly newsletters, social media, and the Selco website. Through a series of regularly scheduled programming, we will cover current trends and projects in both the cable and electric industries. This is our first episode, and it is primarily focused on the cable side of things. As a local independent provider of cable, high-speed internet, and telephone services, Selco is committed to providing the best possible service at the lowest possible price. So Mike, before we discuss what's currently going on in the industry, it might be helpful for people to understand the history behind Selco going into the cable industry in the first place. So why did Selco go into the cable industry?
Well, first I'll answer the question, but first let me say thank you so much for taking time out of your private life to assist in getting the message out through this new media that we're going to try and use to supplement our other means of communicating with our customers. Selco was formed in, or then at the time, Shrewsbury Electric Light Plant in 1908 as an electric provider, a municipal electric provider. And over the years, the core mission of the commission has been to provide the most reliable electric service at the least or lowest possible price. And the commission has held to that standard. They follow the same standard for the cable, but the cable was formed really on a different, came out of a different idea, in that the cable was formed and the Selco, at the time Shrewsbury Electric Light went for the franchise before the Board of Selectmen in 1983. And for those of you who lived in town or grew up during that period, you recall that that was shortly after Proposition 2.5 was voted in 1981. And so the commission at the time thought that maybe if there was no cable entity in, and cable was just becoming popular in the surrounding area at that time, the commission at the time had, and the general manager, Jim Baker, had the forethought that perhaps Selco could, or Shrewsbury Electric Light Plant, could provide that service to the community. We already owned all the poles. Yeah. We're in a similar type business with electric and stringing wire and bringing services into people's home over a wired line. And they thought maybe we could provide this at a cheaper price as a nonprofit, and while at the same time providing an additional revenue source to the town in lieu of a profit. So that was the genesis of cable in 1983. The idea behind it was really to provide a great service and supplement or replace some of the revenue that the town lost as a result of Proposition 2.5 being implemented. So putting back money into to provide the services that the residents had been experiencing prior to 2.5.
Okay.
So that's the main reason behind it.
Okay. So how do our rates compare to other cable providers?
That's an excellent question. And since I've taken on the position, I've made presentations before the Board of Selectmen in 2011, 12, and 13. And we continue to be a lower cost provider than the area private companies that have cable services in our region. Both Comcast and Charter have a footprint, Comcast to the west and Comcast to the east and Charter to the west in Worcester and Spencer and Holden. And by and large, we've always, at least on the basic and expanded basic models, remained significantly lower in our pricing than they. We, for expanded, basic and expanded, which covers about 75 channels. In the Selco channel lineup, it's 2 through, I believe, 81. We are at about a little less than $45 per month per subscriber. The other private entities are in the $60 to $70 per month range. And there are two other municipal providers in Massachusetts, Norwood and the town of Braintree also have cable systems. They too are higher than Selco, so we are the lowest cost cable provider in the state of Massachusetts. We like it that way. However, there's a whole lot on the horizon that's going to change the landscape, and we can get into that as we weave our way through this program.
Sure. So what is can cable Selco specifically do anything to control its cost to maintain the rates?
Well, there's a number of things we do try and do to maintain our costs. There are certain things beyond our control that many people think we should have control over but don't, and we'll get into that, mostly programming. But what do we do to maintain our cost and keep our costs relatively low? We look at privatization when we can for various services, i.e. the installations. We have a contract with Phoenix Communications to do a lot of our installation work on the cable product. We look for means to grow the business within our limited footprint. So while our residential footprint is very well established and mature, we think there's still a lot of potential for us to grow our business, both our internet product and our telephony product in the small business operator, for which we think, and the industry sees, tremendous potential for growth in those arenas. We need to develop some products that are more attractive to business from the phone and the internet side. It's a capital intensive industry. There's a lot of capital expenses. A cable box is not inexpensive. It's a very expensive piece of equipment. They're prone to, it's heavily based on technology. They're prone to breaking from time to time. So we're constantly buying, replacing cable boxes. So we do try and scrutinize and control our capital expenses as best as we can. And really we monitor industry rates and try and position ourselves as well as we can as a outstanding cable provider.
And as technology changes, so do cable boxes,
Yes,
right? So,
yes.
I mean, that's...
Yeah, and that's an issue because, a typical cable box is $300 to $400, and as more and more features are developed and technology grows at a rapid pace, you have an investment in those boxes that they're not compatible with some of the new technological features, so you're always chasing the latest technology, which is a challenge, and you look for, rather than replacing the box, are there add-ons to a box that if somebody wants these extra features, that's what we're currently studying, is if somebody wants the bells and whistles, is there another device that we can add to the box rather than replacing the whole box to give that customer who's willing to pay for the latest and greatest in product development, those services.
Sure. But we can't lower rates. And can you highlight the major reasons why rates go up?
Yeah. That's a great question. It's a question I face all the time. We can lower rates, but we're likely to go out of business. So we're not in it to make a profit. Like I said, we are one of the lowest, if not the lowest. And we've had consultants assist us in developing strategic plans. And the consultants that come in from across the country, we've hired a Denver-based one, and we've also hired a Florida-based one. Can't believe the rates we're charging to our customers. They haven't seen that in the industry that they cover throughout the town, throughout the country. That said, why can't we lower the rates? There are a number of factors, 3 or 4 prominent factors. The first one really is that of all the TV shows in the cable lineup, and there's probably 150 or so on the Selco lineup, 6 conglomerates or 6 major programmers own 95% of the channels that Selco viewers have. That said, that's an industry trend of 6 companies owning 95%. We don't have that same ratio. It's probably 75% in Shrewsbury that are owned by these conglomerates. So these conglomerates own all this programming, and they are able to leverage their clout by saying, you can't just buy, for example, I'll take Viacom. They're one of the 6. Viacom owns 15 of the channels in our lineup. They own MTV and the other MTV products or channels. They own Comedy Central, and they own Nickelodeon. So they're covering multiple demographics: the small child,
Yep.
the teen, the young adult. Many get some of their news from Comedy Central. And so you can't just, the consumer can't just, or Selco as a cable operator can't just say, I want only Nickelodeon, and I don't want to buy the rest of those channels.
Or just one MTV
Right.
station.
So
right?
that in the end, that is known as a la carte, so that you pick and choose what channels. It doesn't exist. The 6 large conglomerates, if you want one of their channels, you have to buy the whole suite. And so every few years, you renegotiate with these conglomerates for the next 4 or 5 years of programming costs. And in this current year, we're negotiating with 4 of the 6 conglomerates, one being Viacom, which is done, the other being ESPN, Disney, and ABC networks. They own a large chunk of programming. The other being Scripps, which is a lot of the lifestyle programming, home and garden, DIY, cooking channel, and the last being the Discovery Network. We will renegotiate with them before the end of the year. So during these renegotiations, Selco as a small operator really can't meet face to face.
Can I just interrupt you for 1 second? Who does the renegotiating
Okay.
specifically? Is it Selco that's going out and doing that, or?
In 95% of the time, it's done by an organization that Selco is a member of, known as the National Cable Television Cooperative, and that's NCTC as the industry term. And they're based in Kansas City, Kansas. And they are a co-op, so to speak, and they represent 800 to 900 cable operators, some larger than Selco, some much smaller than Selco, but all independent cable operators throughout the country. So rather than Selco trying to negotiate with these conglomerates directly, you know, the scale is multi-billion dollar company
Yeah, exactly,
versus
exactly.
a small cable operator. They negotiate on behalf of all of these members. And so that when they pool their subscribers, they have approximately 5 million subscribers that they're representing when they negotiate with these companies. That said, the programmers still have the upper hand, and in the 2 negotiations that have been finalized so far this year with these conglomerates, both Viacom and ABC Disney, combined, the rates that were negotiated for those suites of channel have increased our costs over $5 per subscriber per month, and we have yet to pass that on to the consumer. So Selco is eating currently all those new increased costs until the next time we have a rate increase. So that's the first thing that drives the cost of the cable. It's the programming rates set by 6 to 8 large channel owners that own all the content.
Which we have limited control over.
Correct. They simply negotiate rates, and then many times the consumer thinks that it's the cable operator that's charging them these rates when really...
Well, we're the ones that are billing them.
Right. That's really, it's a pass-through.
Yeah.
And in Selco's case, we haven't always passed through the rate increases,
Yep.
and we've gotten to a point where we no longer can do that, because what we had been doing in the past is we were growing the internet business so fast that people were buying internet services, and we were able to take that revenue and offset the losses we were getting on the video side of the business. And so now, as the internet product levels off and it's fully developed, and we now have, for the first time this year, more internet customers than video customers, and that's an industry trend as well. that for the first time, internet is becoming more of a popular service than cable television, that we don't have the additional revenue to offset the higher costs in the programming. The second thing that drives the cost of cable television is something called retransmission consent. And really that's a statute that came out of the Cable Act of 1996 or 94, I forget the exact year. But that allows the broadcast channels, Channel 4, Channel 5, Channel 7, and Channel 8, which is Fox in our area, the ability to do one of two things. Either one, they can select that you as a cable operator must carry their channel and for free, or two, they reserve the right to negotiate a fee for you to carry their channel. Now when I get into this, I'm thinking this is insanity because when the broadcast channel goes through the cable system, we actually make it a higher quality picture. So they should be paying us to do that. In 2006, the aggregate cost of all that retransmission consent for all of those channels was 69 cents. It's now well over $5, and this year, all of our retransmission consent agreements expire on December 31st. So we've already started renegotiations with the 4 major networks, and they're all seeking significant increases. So again, you have the cable programmers, then you have the broadcast networks. They're negotiated separately. We negotiate directly with the broadcast networks, and the cable channels are negotiated on our behalf by the NCTC. Those two amount is all programming, 2 different arenas, but they're the major driver behind the increase in cable rates. The third is, and this is really a part of all programming costs, is that sports are extremely expensive. And yesterday on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, yesterday being September 4th, there was a huge article on the front page on the NFL and the deal they just signed to carry 8 football games in the current season on, I think it's Thursday Night Football, for $300 million for those 8 games. So all these broadcasters have multi-billion-dollar contracts that keep increasing with sports leagues, and the only way for them to recoup on their investment is 1, through advertising, and 2, through they're using the retransmission channel to recover the cost of signing these deals with sports networks. So if you're not a sports fan, you're paying a lot of the bill is going towards the sports, and there's really no way to stop it.
Yeah.
So retransmission consent, sports programming, and the strong arm of the the conglomerates that own cable channels and programming are the primary factors why cable bills are growing, 7 to 10 times or even more the rate of inflation in many cases. So that's what's behind it. The other thing would be, we mentioned on earlier, is it can be a capital intensive business, and as technology changes, you're constantly upgrading systems. We're constantly upgrading our internet. We're trying to, and we keep speeds as high as anybody around here. Our download speeds are really, advertised speeds are as high as anybody in our competitive footprint.
Well, this is a big year because it sounds like you're renegotiating a lot of contracts in this year specifically. We always hear about the blackouts. So since it's a renegotiation year, can you discuss how and why contract negotiations with these conglomerates can lead to an interruption in our cable service?
So the way it works is the statute allows the network, say in the case of a network, we sign a 3-year deal with, we'll take any of them, Fox or CBS. We sign a 3-year deal with them. That deal will expire on December 31st, 2014. So then we're negotiating for another 3-year deal. If we can't reach an agreement with them, and if they're asking for some astronomical increase, we have to make the decision internally, both the staff and the commission, what's in the best interest of the consumer. And so if you don't come to an agreement, they reserve the right to pull the feed from
Of course.
from Selco's subscriber base. So that's when you see the blackouts. You've seen them with DirecTV last year in New York. Time Warner Cable and CBS were at a stalemate for several months. They ended up settling the day before the NFL season started because I think
How convenient.
Time Warner caved.
Yeah.
And they weren't, there were some people, their customer base, just flooding their call centers with, you can't do this. And then they have other customers saying, I don't care about football,
Yep.
keep them blacked out. So it's really, we as a custodian of the asset have to act in the best interest of the consumer. We, in the most recent negotiation with Viacom, were actively involved with the NCTC on a daily basis as the negotiations were carried on. And of the 700 to 900 members who were involved in this negotiation, I think a half dozen to a dozen didn't sign on and drop the channels altogether. But
Wow.
we didn't do that, and as the programming costs continue to escalate, it's something we're going to have to consider. But we felt that we look at what are the most watched shows,
Yep.
and in that case, so many children watch Nickelodeon that
Yeah, you can't pull Nickelodeon.
yeah, so it was one of those deals where
Yep.
we really and so much of the programming is owned by these 6 companies that
Yep.
again, you can't get just Nickelodeon. You have to buy all 15 channels, and then they're always adding new channels that when you
Cost you
renegotiate
more
with them
money.
again,
Yep.
they want you to pay more. So
Yep.
that's kind of the genesis or the crux behind that.
It sounds like we're at the mercy of these conglomerates. Can the consumer do anything to control the rate increases?
Well, that's an excellent question. I think that, yes, in the end, it will be the consumer who has the final say. What can be done? I think if the consumer has the time, and everyone has a busy life, so how much time are they going to invest in an issue like the cost of cable programming? But clearly, the consumer has to push their federal legislators and make federal legislators aware of the significance of the issue and how it's impacting the disposable income, because the inflation rate in the cable industry is, as I said, so much more significant than the other baskets of consumer goods that something has to give and it has to break. So one, I would say, if you have the time, call your congressman, your senator, put the heat on them. It's really going to be the consumers who almost revolt against these programming charges, because we as an operator, really, our hands are tied. There's nothing we can really do other than stop carrying those
it.
programs. If the industry model changes to a la carte, I think Selco is well positioned to handle that because of the strength of our internet pipe. And if people are able to buy and programming is fed through the internet rather than a cable box, then people are able to buy and pick and choose what they want. Someday, we win big time because we have a strong pipe. That said, I don't see that happening for another 5 to 10 years at the earliest. So what can the consumer do? Take legislative action. They can, we have through the NCTC, if they're looking for facts, we have a website called TV on My Side, which we put on public access and notified people during the Viacom that if we were going to pull the plug on Viacom, or if NCTC couldn't reach a deal with Viacom, that they should look to that website for facts. So NCTC is always updating that website as to what's going on in the cable industry. So if customers of Selco have an interest, they should go to TV on My Side, all one word, .com. And the other thing I think, Maria, as sad as it is, and you're seeing it, is that eventually the prices get too high from these programmers that people stop buying the video product. and that they're just revolt, and they're not gonna, and they're gonna get viewership through more over-the-top services like Netflix and maybe buy an antenna to get the broadcast.
Sure.
So that's what they can do. There's not an awful lot I can do or Selco can do to stop the rapid escalation in pricing of programming.
Is there anything in the electric side that impacts cable?
There really isn't a lot on the electric side. The two businesses are pretty much mutually exclusive. So no, I really don't think there's anything that impacts the cable industry from the electric industry. I would say that there are things on the cable side that impact the electric side. I recently read an article that some of the new modems that Comcast is deploying that allow Wi-Fi to be shared amongst neighbors off each other's modem, that they're costing, and they're not telling people, but the power consumption is an additional, on average, $2.90 per month for having this type of modem in your house versus the modems that Selco has in its house. So that's kind of a hidden cost that no one thinks about, but it's out there. So, but no, on the electric side, Maria, I don't really see a lot of overlap in the cable impacting the electric industry as a whole.
You've certainly given us a lot to think about, and we hope that everyone has found this episode informative. After hearing all this, you may have more questions or want more information about something a topic that we've discussed. In keeping with our efforts to maintain the highest level of customer service, we welcome you to email us at lca@townisp.com. L, lights, C, cable, A, action. So lca@townisp.com. Email us with any questions on any topic. We will use it for future programming and to keep you informed of what's going on. Also, don't forget to visit www.tvonmyside.com to stay informed about current trends in the cable industry. We so appreciate your tuning in, and be sure to join us for the next episode when we'll be talking about some significant events on the electric side of things. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Mike.